Alrighty, good morning, good afternoon rather. Let's start today off with your USD. Alright, so I'm gonna make this video quick because I do have other things to go through. So bear with me. My sell zone is made up of an engulfing sell meets an engulfing sell, then the buy zone, and an engulfing sell that failed. Price came back, closed within, created this first engulfing buy, came back down, closed within, created the second engulfing buy. So we have our ABC or HLZ zone for a buy and a sell meets a sell for the sell zone, right? Current price, this H4, it tapped into the key level just in this current H4, which it did over here, but it had no setups, all right, in the key level that happened. No setups at all. So still, we will be waiting for a potential setup that can happen in this key level. All right, so what can Euro USD do? Oops, let's just delete this real quick. For Euro USD, current price is here. Now I'm gonna wait for Euro USD. If I decide to trade this pair, I'm gonna wait for the next H4 as well as the US session. All right, because we do have a high impact news on your USD pairs, so there might not be there might not be much movement from USD pairs just yet. It will wait for the news to be released in the US session. All right, so I'm gonna wait to trade until then. So what I will wait for it to do is either retrace back into the key level, meaning the H4 has to still respect this zone. So for low risk traders, wait for H4 to close first, then you find the setup. If you have a higher risk appetite, then while the H4 is playing around in this zone, you can find a setup as you go. All right, so if you find the setup, whether it's around the H4 playing for higher risk traders, or if you're a low risk trader waiting for the H4 to close first, if you can find a setup for a sell in this zone, then potentially we can catch a sell back down. But if it breaks above, then potentially you might want to test a higher area. All right, and after breaking, the either shoot up in one go if the volume is strong enough. So we will see that during the news. Either if it wants to break this zone, it can shoot up in one go, and if it breaks, it will just chase the next zone. Or if the next H4 or this current H4 decides to break up top and the buyers are waiting to not push the price up yet, but it broke the zone, then we can wait for the price to retrace back into the key level for a better buy up. All right, so we will trade the pullback after the breakout if it breaks our zone. Now, if the pair decides to just drop into our buy zone and respects it, which is a potential also that can happen since there will be news today, a high impact news on USD. So if it does that and H4 respects it, then potentially we can catch a bounce back up. But if it breaks down below, then I might want to test a lower area. Okay, we have a zone down here, so you can map that out too. So that's for Euro USD. Again, where do you find your entries, or where do you enter from, which time frame? All right, so for people who continue to watch my videos and hearing me repeat the same things over and over, monitor M5 or M15 for entry. All right, stick with M15 first. If you can't find any setups on M15 or a potential setup, if you can find at least a potential setup, then you switch down to M5. A potential setup meaning it can be either an engulfing sell, an engulfing buy, or an engulfing fail. All right, we need at least the second engulfing, whether that be anything that we have learned, to happen first before we press any entries, right? At least. Meaning if it's an engulfing, then you need the second engulfing. If you have an engulfing fail, then you want the second engulfing to happen first, or the first engulfing rather, to make an EFEG. For lowest risk, you will wait for the second engulfing, making EF, EG, EG, or your ABC. All right, so wait for those to happen first before you press anything for lower risk, and do not press before the setup is made. All right, because if it decides to reverse, then it can also, and you are ruining your trading plan if you do so. All right, so follow it and be disciplined. Next pair, USD CAD. Now I gave USD CAD yesterday also, but the pair did not come into our zone, so it's showing resistance just right here. Okay, right here. And it's really testing this engulfing fail. So if I were to map this out, it's currently testing this one. All right, this tiny engulfing fail over here that you see. So the price is really showing reactions, meaning it comes in and just, oh, too many notifications. So the price is really coming in, tapping in, and decides to leave wicks, right? But rather than leaving multiple wicks and still dropping down further, it's really trying to test to push back up. That's also why I did not give any setups or any key levels over here, because the key level to this zone and this zone will be super close. So from a trader's perspective, if you were to choose this or this, the upper level would be most valuable, right? It will be more worth it rather than risking your money over here. Why not wait for a premium price to press any buys or sells? All right, so I'm going to stick to my key levels for this one. Now, since we do have a high impact news again for USD pairs, what I'm going to wait for it to do is I will wait for this H4 and the next H4 pre-US session to see if the price is going to come into this zone to respect it or not. All right, because if it continues to float around here, there are three things that can happen when the news is released. All right, so if the news is released and the price decides to start spiking or dropping, it can do this. Either spike up all the way, right, passing this zone, closing above, breaking this zone, and then it can use this key level for a retracement for a better buy up. That's number one. Or it can spike up into this key level if it stays around here, right, during these two H4s to come pre-US session. So if it stays around here, the second scenario is when the news comes, it can spike up into this key level, play around a little bit before dropping. So on H4, you might see wick. All right, or if it still decides to play around here pre-US session and the news is released, it can also decide to just drop into our buy zone. All right, so those are the three scenarios if it doesn't move past this engulfing fail. But if it does, meaning H4 decides to buy up into this zone over here that we've marked an engulfing buy that failed in the process of failing, created this engulfing sell. So we have an EFEG sell. So if it decides to climb up right before the US session happens and plays around this key level, then you can try to find a setup for a potential sell. But for low risk traders, since we do know high impact news is going to happen for USD pairs, wait for the US session first and wait for the news to be released for low risk traders. All right. But if you have a higher risk appetite and you find yourself entering the market before the US session because you found a setup, make sure you set break even. There's a chance that it could retrace back with a poke to leave a wick and touch your SL. If your SL is too tight, there's a chance, but if it is going in the true direction of it, it can just put you in blues in a blink of an eye. All right, so it's the risk that you're willing to put. And if you have made and accept, if you've made up your mind and you've accepted the risk and reward that you can get from it, then go for it, right? But if you are not willing to do so, then stay out of it and wait until after the news is released. All right, so what can USD CAD do? Same thing as I explained yesterday. I'm going to wait for it to come into my key level. I'm going to wait for the H4 to close first, then find my setup for a sell back down. Oops. But if it decides to break above, then I'm going to wait for it to come up into my sell zone up top over here, or after breaking, retrace back into my key level that was broken from the opposite direction for a potential buy instead, right? Or I can also wait for the price to drop back into my buy zone, and if it respects that, then potentially I can catch a buy back up. But if it breaks down below, then I might want to test a lower area. Okay, after monitoring for an entry and after pressing either buy or sell in the market, you have to put your SL. All right, follow the flow. So after you've entered, make sure you count 40 pips from your entry. Oops. From entry. Right? So this is a not too tight, not too loose SL. It's a very standard SL. Right? And it's very beginner friendly also. So stick to SL. Make sure that you manage your lot sizes accordingly. Alright? Especially with USD pairings, because if you are, let's say, in this setup, you decide that, oh, you know what, you want to put 5 entries over here. Make sure that your lot sizes are proper, whether it be 0.01, 0.02, 0.1, 0.3, depending on your account size and the amount that you are willing to lose for this 40 pips and for those numbers of entries. All right, so calculate it, what you are willing to lose beforehand, before you do anything. All right, so that's USD CAD. Last but not least, oops, UJ. Now, UJ, you probably have made money from this, all right? Since I gave you the zone, right? So you can see the wick poked and then flew. So from this wick up until, oops, if we were to take it, from the key level to the highest it made for UJ, it already ran 72 pips, all right? 72 pips. So, what does that mean? Means we can still use our zone, this zone, which is an engulfing sell that failed, still as our potential buy, because now that we have this wick confirming that the buyers are quite strong, right? The buyers are very, very strong, but the candlesticks failed to close within to try to make our first engulfing buy. Right, so this would still be our potential buy setup, and for my sell setup, again, an engulfing sell had the wick come into play before this whole drop. All right, I was going to give a zone over here, which I can also see it's an engulfing buy with an engulfing sell that failed on for this zone. So we have an EFEG sell, but as I looked into it and really monitor and analyze the charts, again, from this zone to this zone is only 40 pips, right? Only 40 pips, meaning if you were to enter here and your SL is 40 pips and it decides to test this zone, then you would hit SL before you can monitor anything from here. So again, from worth it spectrum or a worth it meter, this is more worth it in a trader's perspective, especially in my opinion, right? Because you don't want to trade the black zone, you don't want to trade the void, you want to get those strong pushes from top and bottom. Hence, I'm using this engulfing sell as a potential zone. The price came back, had a wick. Same thing over here, an engulfing fail, had a very strong wick, all right? A push down from here and a push up from here. So I'm going to monitor these two zones instead. Now, the current price is very close to the buy zone, but we know that the previous H4, which is this particular one, already tapped into the zone. But because the candlesticks failed to close within, there's still a chance for it to retrace back into this level, especially with the news. It can either poke and reverse back, or if the volume is strong enough, it could just poke and go below, or poke and just keep dropping to go below, breaking this zone, or it can also spike up into our sell zone. All right, potentials of it. So again, since it's a USD pair, wait for the US session, wait for the news to be released if you are a low risk trader, and see where it goes first. So what you can do now is monitor where it might go during this Euro session and the next H4 opening. Then find setups, find potential setups in the zones that I gave, especially around and in the key levels. Find those so you have chances for when the price does come into those zones, you can either choose to press buy or sell, or you can also choose not to enter the market. That is completely up to you, but at least you have everything prepared. All right, so for UJ, if it decides to drop into our buy zone after this 72 pips of a poke, if it decides to do that, then potentially we can catch a buy back up. If it breaks down below, then it might want to test a lower zone. Right, we also have a zone over here. Then if it decides to climb up or shoot up into our sell zone and respects that, then potentially we can catch a sell back down. If it breaks above, then it might want to test a higher area. All right, so that's it for the 3 pairs. For your TPs, I usually set my TPs at 20 pips. That's the marker for me to set break even for my other entries. But if you feel like you are anxious to cut your profits very quick, whether it be 5 pips or 10 pips in blues, then start from there. All right, because meaning right now you don't have the capacity to hold for too long just yet. So grow from that. If you find yourself cutting at 10 pips, set your first TP at 10 pips. All right, and the rest you set break even. You can do 10, 15, 20, 10, 20, 30, completely up to you. At least you get some profits before you manually cut them, and you will build a more consistent habit in trying to stay in the market longer. All right, but mind you, when you're trying to do that, sometimes it will hit most of your break evens before going to the second TP, which is also okay, because at least you didn't lose any capital and you gained some of the profits. All right, don't rush the process, trust it. Whether you make little money or big money, money is the same thing. Money is the same frequency no matter the amount. So be grateful and trust the process. Don't rush yourself. Just continue learning, growing, and adapting. Okay? I'm going to get to your messages after a few errands that I have to do, a few chores, and I'll talk to you soon.